President Bola Tinubu says he takes full responsibility for the economy of the country and is assuring Nigerians that he's working to lead Nigeria towards economic and social prosperity. Addressing Afenifere leaders at the residence of Pa Ruben Fashironti in Akure, Ondo State, the president emphasized his commitment to ensuring Nigeria. The president emphasized his commitment to ensuring that things work in the economy of Nigeria. He also talked about, his reasons behind going back to the Orosoi report to be able to cut the cost of governance and ensure that things are better in the country as we speak. So joining us now on the morning show to discuss this and other issues is Esili, Eigbe, an economist and director at ESCAP Management. Great to have you, Esili. So the president is taking responsibility for his actions. I said not a big deal. But when you look at what we have now in the currency market, seems like the CBN has some arsenal now to defend and go at it. And they're putting that in the market as we speak. What's your take on that?
I think it's still very early, okay? I think one thing that's very clear is that we don't have sufficient reserves to obviously tackle the demand or, the backlog of, FX in the marketplace. A lot of the reforms that have taken place on the monetary side, in my opinion, are just the first steps to addressing this issue and potentially inflation. So I think that there's no silver bullet, okay? It's going to take time, years possibly, to manage the currency situation and also inflation, okay? I mean, if we're looking for example of countries where we've seen similar issues or situations and how they've handled it, perhaps poorly or properly, we need to look at places like Argentina, Venezuela, Sudan, etc. All these countries that are currently struggling, and you see that it takes a while. I think that one lesson Nigeria can learn from all of these countries is that you need to move very quickly. You need to be ahead of the problem, and that's why I'll suggest, in the context of President Bola Tinubu's discussions yesterday, I think it's important that Nigeria really begins to look at serious fiscal consolidation. There have been reforms already that have been announced to this, but the body language of the government, in my opinion, speaks otherwise. It seems to me more expansionary. And if you listen to Central Bank Governor's press conference on Tuesday, I believe, he was talking about the need for the federal government to be aligned with their policy of tightening the economy. Yeah. And I've listened to you, listened to some of your guests who've discussed that as perhaps being a little contradictory. People want to see some expansion in the economy. But I think the central bank governor was pretty right, and I'll try to quote him. He said that the option is really between, a deterioration, significant deterioration in output or growth, or taking necessary steps to sustain production, which is which can only survive in a stable and low inflationary environment. And so a lot of the steps that they've taken or are taking right now are very important to get there.
All right. So let's talk about the steps. And I'm glad you talked about that press conference. First MPC, the MPC meeting, and 400 basis points, raising by 400 basis points. As you would imagine, this has elicited a number of reactions. Some for, some against. Some saying too draconian, too drastic. Others are saying it is what has to be done must be done, and it's in order to tame inflation, we must take very strong measures. I'd like to get your take on this. And of course, the effect of that, the ripple effect of that. He had said that he understood and he acknowledged there was going to be a trade-off between output growth and taming inflation. And people have said the effect of that would be even resulting in loss of jobs. Do you think I asked yesterday our guest a worthy trade-off, but first of all, your take on 400 basis points, draconian, necessary, and then the effects of that?
No, it's not draconian. If you remember last time I was here on your program, I said he needed to move it by 500 basis points.
Oh, so you moved it
Yeah. So, I wasn't totally disappointed that it wasn't 500 basis points. I think that the fact that he moved the CRR, I think helped compensate for that sort of this 100 basis point disappointment. Yeah. But just speaking to the issue, I believe that we should be ready for more pain. I think people believe that there's sort of a switch. You just put on or click the switch and things go back to normal. We're pretty much just taking the first steps I think something that the central bank governor should have done, or perhaps members within the committee should have done on Tuesday, was also communicate very vehemently to the public and the market that rates will need to continue to rise. It's very important. I think that signal would have really helped them with, the task that they have ahead. I heard you say, I think yesterday or so, as to perhaps some sort of evidence or maybe empirical evidence as to perhaps how do you know what level of rate is appropriate, etc. And I think I've heard some of your colleagues, Reuters, talk about the need for positive real interest rate. I think that really hits the nail. You need an environment that is conducive or incentivizes locals like you and I to invest in our economy and not trading that for USD assets. Once you get that, you start to take away a lot of the panicking or panic that has led you and I to convert our perhaps daily, monthly earnings into dollar assets. Because what are we trying to do? We're mainly trying to survive. We're trying to maintain, our standard of living. Pension funds, have had the value of, retirees, retirement funds
Eroded.
Completely eroded. If I recall back in the 80s, this was particularly the issue, the relatively high inflation levels that led to the demise of the defunct pension scheme that we had.
So are we not going back to the 80s, early 90s territory where we had interest rates about 40 to 50%, which brought about low productivity and dampening of the economy? Because with this 22.5%, probably when you go now to the commercial banks, it will come down to about 30%. All right.
As I already pointed out, we need to get there. We don't have a choice.
So it will come out to about 30%.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're talking about expansion productivity. I mean, an average company will go lend at that rate. You expect them to compete. I mean, look at the Nestle numbers. These are some of their concerns with productivity. So I know the analogy, pick a struggle. Do we want to bring down inflation or want to have expansionist growth at the same time, have all of that eroded with inflation? But there's also the fine line of balancing act, where, and to a large extent, what is even the component of our inflation? We've been raising rates at a point in this country, but are those the things that really precipitate food inflation in the first place? We've talked about the interventionist, about 10 trillion that is put in the economy, like Aduso was saying, that those are the things that have exacerbated money supply and things like that and led to inflation. But really, when you look at it in the real sense of things, those you want to produce, you're given a hard time. So how do you juxtapose all of these things going on at the same time?
It's never really easy, okay? And that's why I said it'll be a fair assumption to expect more suffering in the next couple of months.
How long are we going to suffer for in Nigeria?
Could even be 2 years. If you look at
2 years?
if you look at Argentina, for example, the new president, he's very popular, despite the fact that he's been very clear to his people that, look...
No, don't even talk Argentina, because Argentina has been suffering since after the Second World War, when they bungled their riches. Let's not even talk Argentina. Because Argentina even had a professor of economics, the likes of Cardozo's of this world. They couldn't do anything. So Argentina has been suffering. That's why sometimes, in my heart, I think Mele is a joke. I mean, we'll see with time. Yeah.
Like I said, there's no silver bullet. We're going to have to take the pain for possibly the next 2 to 3 years. And I think that's what perhaps the president could come ahead and say, look, Nigerians, it's going to be a very tough 2-3 years, okay? We need to put together a plan, probably articulate it, but I haven't seen one if there's one that's available.
Aha, voila.
I haven't seen any
So there's no
articulated
plan, right?
Development plan for this country. If I were the president, I want to get ahead of the problems and take credit for putting Nigeria now on the path. Clean the slate. This is an opportunity to just clean the slate. Put forward a development plan that will get Nigeria to where it needs to be, perhaps 30 years from now. He doesn't need to be the messiah, sort of the guy who completes the job, but at least the guy who starts that process of getting Nigeria properly planned. You've talked about so many things. But you see, if they haven't been properly coordinated, execution, properly monitored, handed over to the right, perhaps minister or captain to handle execution, things could turn out very, very, very badly.
So that's, I'm glad.
We don't need more of the same. We need things done differently. You can even seize the opportunity as well to implement not just economic reforms, but even social reforms.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we talk about the economy, we also look at it being also largely a leadership problem. And you talk about no development plan. We have a Minister of Finance and the coordinating Minister of the Economy, whom I would assume would have responsibility as well.
Is he actually the coordinating Minister of the Economy? Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I know he's Minister of Finance, but I know that title used to be.
No, he is the coordinating Minister of the Economy. And that's why I'm saying that a number of people have said that we've heard more from the CBN governor than from Mr. Wale Edun, who is the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy, for avoidance of doubt. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the road to recovery, because this is a term we've heard a number of times, I love that you bring in the conversation around the development plan. One of the challenges that we have in leadership is that finishing mindset, that it has to be me. This long-term plan, the starter and not the finisher. It's a big problem that we have, not just at federal level, even as subnationals, and that's why we cannot record real growth, because each person wants to start and finish, and so we don't have any continuity, even though we say government is a continuum. But in terms of that development plan, what are some of the things that must go into it? I mean, yesterday I was talking about the fact that, yes, we've heard a number of times the next 2 years, like you're saying, even though people don't want to hear that, tighten your belt, it's going to be a rough ride. But what would make that rough ride easier? What would cushion? I mean, that word has come up a number of times. I mean, even your seat belt is perhaps that. Okay, what would be the seat belt?
I hear you,
on this
and
rough
it's
ride?
a fair point. As I heard before, I point out yesterday, the man on the street is hungry.
Yes,
and this is a very true fact. I think it's even normal these days for you to walk into a supermarket, even if you're in a highbrow area, and expect that when you're checking out at the till, you're paying for the groceries of perhaps 2 or 3 other families. Okay? People are hungry. So it's unfortunate that we're where we are today, but we clearly had previously competent central bank governor, and I wasn't on the ball on inflation. I'm happy that the central bank governor, I can talk about some of the specific issues or points that I picked up from his conversation on Tuesday. But I think that clearly the masses are the most vulnerable, unfortunately, and will have to suffer more. The government has sort of, they've directed perhaps some of these intervention programs, direct transfers. Yeah. My concern, that honestly, to answer your question, would be the best way.
That's direct transfers.
Direct transfers. But my concern is, how do you identify those that you're doing the direct transfers to? Are they documented? Yeah. Because otherwise, it's quite similar to the whole subsidy program that we have in power sector, in still today in the petroleum industry, where I believe that subsidy today of petrol has perhaps now exceeded what it was in the Buhari administration. But if I may just also point out, I think that the government also needs to consider creating more pressure valves. The system needs to breathe. We don't have power today. There's no power in this country right now. I mean, if you've been under a rock somewhere, there's a news flash. There's no power, okay? And the reason for that is we perhaps simply can't pay perhaps the cost of gas today. And there's so many ways that I think that we can resolve that. You're talking about ways that we can perhaps improve things.
And not just for individuals, I know that's the fair, but even for small businesses.
You don't have to raise the cost of electricity to the guy on the street. You can pass on some of that cost to perhaps the A, B customers. Also the corporate customers. That's still a lot better option than having a lot of the corporates today running on diesel. Okay? That's more expensive and contributing to the inflationary pressures that we have.
But with due respect, most of those corporates are already building their own power plants, and they're quickly moving on from what is happening.
Majority of the corporates we talk about, are small, medium-scale businesses, and more than outweigh the large corporates or multinationals you probably have in mind.
So the large corporates are already trying to build their power plants because they can't stand this, and they need productivity. Hence, you're seeing their downline cost increase.
No, I mean, those guys are even doing well. The Nestle's you refer to, Nestle runs on gas. They got a big gas turbine.
Yeah. But in all of this, I have always pointed that even with the social intervention scheme, we copy things wrongly. And I'll give you an instance. Most of these cash transfers are from Bolsa Familia. Bolsa Familia works because it ties them to outcomes. You are not paid except your child goes to school. And we saw that happen recently. Most of the children that enjoyed Bolsa Familia in the early 2000s are the ones that came back to vote for Lula in the last election. Today they become lawyers, they become doctors, and when you take the evidence, they'll tell you, if not for Lula, I wouldn't have been able to go to school. Today we are not tying it to anything.
And that's what I'm saying. How do you?
That's the first problem.
How do you identify them? How do you?
That's why it's another show.
How do you document?
But most importantly, costing the cost of governance. Going back to this Orosa Air report. You say Nigerians would need to suffer pain, but is the government also willing to suffer pain in this country where we've increased the money we give to over 400 people called the lawmakers to talk, and most of the time they say things that goodness me, don't let me even go to what the Senate president says. It scares me what he says. And we are bloating this size. Are we really serious in this country? Do you see any level of seriousness?
I'm assuming that's rhetoric.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I do think about this a lot, pondering it on my glass of Budweiser. And I think it's something on the table of everybody. You saw Nestle's numbers today. Eigbe InBev, which is the parent company of International Breweries, today reported a double-digit decline in volumes in the fourth quarter of 2023. So the situation is pretty bad. And like I said, it's really up to the government to get ahead of the story, ahead of it.
But
are we engaging?
Have you seen any seriousness? Because you see, that's the problem.
Let's
suffer for 2 years.
So
but you're not seeing the seriousness. You're seeing the outlandish. The president is taking his children.
We're hearing a lot of rhetoric. We're hearing a lot of rhetoric and signaling. Take, for example, the adoption of the report you talked about. But as I told you, the body language is totally different. But that's what we really need to do. Starting with the development plan. That's where you start. And then you communicate that properly to even the guy on the street. He understands his role in that plan. But even more importantly is that across the federal government ministries, department agencies, everybody knows and understands what they're supposed to do so that they're well coordinated. And that's why we're talking about the Minister of,
follow plans. We had the first industrial plan, second industrial plan in this country. These things were left unfollowed. In the last administration, we even had a development plan. But do we really follow these things? Or we just write it as a document? Vision 2020, Vision 2050, Vision 2010. I mean, we've had this plan. Do we really follow?
They were not implemented.
Why?
Well, again, leadership, okay? Leadership. So it's a question. That's why I was saying that, look, the president can seize the opportunity. He can champion this. He can be the hero. He can be that hero and champion this. Let's start on a fresh slate. Things are already very bad, okay?
All right. So I hear
Rebuild.
I hear you when you say the man on the street would understand the development plan and know their role. And I laugh because I feel like the only role the man on the street
well
has
communicated, like I said, it needs to be well communicated.
Okay, well, fair enough. But the only role that they have at the moment is where they fit in and how they can feed themselves and their family members. I think that's something that a number of people are thinking. And that's why I keep hammering on in the immediate. Dr. Bati says that they don't understand GDP figures, CRR, raising basis points. All they want to know is that, can I go to the store and afford food? Do I have money in my pocket?
You need to communicate very
I agree
well.
with you. I agree with you. And we've had quite a big issue around that. In fact, we've often questioned the role and the activities of the National Orientation Agency, Only recently they finally released a statement from the president in different languages. I don't know to what extent. And that's why I like what you say when you say communication is not just about passing a message, it's ensuring that the intended gets the message you're passing. And I don't think so far that's been successful. But I'd like you to get your take on, since you're here, and we had a big conversation this morning around Binance and their role in the FX speculation or manipulation, as has been said by the CBN, and now the detaining of two of their executives. We had a big, just talk about the fact that, okay, is Binance the problem of Nigerian FX?
Of course not. I heard Rufai's comment on this earlier.
What should we be facing?
Are
they being made as scapegoats just so that we're able to point a finger at someone, or is there some merit?
I don't use this platform to indict anybody. We don't have enough to indict Binance.
Yeah.
As you pointed out earlier this morning, it's exchange. Okay? Binance isn't taking positions against Nigeria or the federal government. It is possible that there were lapses in their KYC.
Yeah.
This is pretty normal. It happens. In fact, happened quite recently in their business in the US, for which they were fined. If we investigate and find that actually they didn't conduct proper KYC, and then illicit money was allowed to leave the country or move around, then you find them. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Binance, I think, has been more positive to the country's development than not.
What's the positivity of Binance to the country's development?
I mean, look, new ways of transacting, okay? Creating that platform, creating employment, technology. I can go on. Let's not discourage foreigners from investing in the country. We need more of that. There was, in fact, an article on this on the FT, and I think it really sent a very bad message about Nigeria, the way we, arrested, executives. What is wrong with just formally requesting for the data that, you require, etc.? Again, I don't want to use this platform as to indict anyone. I don't have enough information to do that. I believe the authorities will conduct their investigation. We'll find out. But again, I don't believe this is a criminal. It's not a criminal issue. Okay, they're regulated by the SEC. Okay, you investigate. You find out that they have flouted certain rules. You find them. They improve on their KYC onboarding of customers, etc.
But this way of
but the way that we are approaching it is very wrong. We're approaching it very wrong.
National Security Advisor involved.
You're sending like I said, this was published on the FT yesterday. Okay? Yeah. So the international community is reading it. You're out there saying we're open for business, and then you
to do something else locally.
We need to be very careful.
I mean, it speaks volumes about signaling.
We need to be very careful.
Like you said.
I want to believe that the arrest, the detaining of, the officials of Binance might have just been the overzealousness of, the operatives, and perhaps the government can separate itself and say, that's not our policy or approach.
Anyway, isn't that always a lot of overzealous officials everywhere? I want to ask you, so the CBN also says that they've been able to increase the reserves, 34 billion. That's what they said. So they've grown the reserve. That's why I was asking you, it's as if they have some ammunition now.
No, but of course we got some inflow recently.
Yeah,
so that complements the reserve.
I mean, the Afrex inflow and all of that. And from there, they got about $400 million to be able to clear some of the encumbrances. So, and it's that
some money to the BDCs
as well. It's the same reserve that now given to the BDCs. Yeah. And not trying to fix the price at 1,300 to the dollars. What they first said was criminal. Before we're going to float. Now they're back to fixing till they get the fundamentals right. How long can we continue with this?
Fixing the price? How long? That's a good question you raised. In fact, I got harassed with this particular issue yesterday on a platform with some of my old colleagues. To be honest with you, I think
because another 10 billion they say is coming.
To be honest with you, I think it was sloppy. It was sloppy.
Really? What should they have done?
It was a waste of FX. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, so the CBN wasted FX by...
I'm saying At 1,350, you're saying it's fixing, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
Yeah.
It is fixing.
No, they sell to them as 100,300 and said, okay, 1% variation. So that will come to about 1,340.
No, but the market was higher.
Yeah.
You sold to them at a level that was much lower than the market.
Yeah.
But you're saying at the same time that you want market transparency and price discovery, etc., etc.
Yeah. But you're fixing.
But it seems like you're trying to guide the market.
No, not seem like you are back to fixing.
Yeah.
Fix, I think.
Yeah. So look, I think it's wrong, and I think they need to stop it. It's just a waste of FX. You enter the market and sell at whatever the price is, and you've already set the corridor within which they're allowed to sell. I think that's enough. But I do agree with them that there's a need to sanitize, the BDC operators, or that. I think that some of the new reforms
make this make sense to me. The same BDC operators were chasing with EFCC officials last 2 weeks. All of a sudden, voila, out of the blue, they're selling them $20,000.
They're very important. Okay, let's be very clear about that. I think it was a very big mistake for.
Why chase them last week with police?
Again, I don't know if those directives were coming directly from the central bank or from, I don't know, the executive. Again, this might just be overzealous operatives. It happens a lot. It happens a lot in our country, okay? I think that, those events last week might have produced some results, but I think that what he did at the MPC meeting on Tuesday definitely was the right thing to do, and those were definitely the right steps.
All right.
As opposed to going around arresting sort of BDC operators or, yesterday arresting executives of Binance.
All right, I'd like us to talk about, just before we go, the fiscal side of things. We've dwelt on the monetary policy, but you, at the very beginning, when you opened up in your conversation, you said that there must be, for economic recovery, a consolidation of efforts from both the monetary side and the fiscal side. And when we look at inflation, one of the core mandates of the CBN is to tame inflation or to regulate in terms of using monetary policy tools. But if this will happen, because if you look at food inflation, for instance, which is a driver of core inflation, part of the challenges that we haven't been dealt with. So you can use all the monetary policy tools, take on that side, but if we don't get the fiscal policy side right, then we are not going to get out of this. Security, farmers, you talk about agricultural seedlings, improved seedlings and the likes. How do we begin to fix that side of things to complement the efforts of the CBN?
You're right, and I think that, going back to my point earlier, we need a development plan. Again, I keep happening on that.
Yeah.
You and your family.
And for the Minister of Finance.
You and your family, when you get up or you're heading into a new year, you do plan ahead.
Even as individuals.
As a corporate, you have like a 5-year, 10-year plan. We need to have that. And that will guide how you go after some of the initiatives targets that you monitor them perhaps every quarter. We used to have this when we had, I think during previous administrations, I would say like actual coordinating minister.
Oh,
you sit down.
Hence your sarcasm.
And
now you get the sarcasm.
You're drawing everybody and directing you. You see that the reports are indicating that you were behind here, and then you're saying, okay, we need to put more emphasis here, there, and here. That's how you get things done. Again, I'm not saying that those guys did a great job, or they did everything they ought to have done, but I'm just saying that those are some of the things we expect, starting with a development plan. And you start to address some of the issues that you talked about. Security. I'm just as baffled as you are. It's a big elephant. Yeah. It's hanging around us right now.
So how can the NNPC play a role in this? Because, the argument I have always favored is fix till you get your fundamentals right to be able to get inflows to come in. That's always been my argument. But the problem with us is the inflows are not coming because of the NNPC and all the encumbrance and everything, FDIs and all of that. What role can the NNPC play in all of this?
Yeah, the NNPC, I think, is moving towards being a private company, and I think that perhaps the best they can do is perhaps helping to source some of those products at the cheapest price possible. They've already engaged themselves in so many swaps that I mean, today I'm told that they're probably locked up, a lot of the crude oil production, or perhaps even, reserves that they own. So I'd rather not draw an NPC.
Where do you think the money can come from as we wrap up? 30 seconds. Where do you think this money can come from?
Foreign investment, local investment. I mean, we have 25 billion of money.
Remittances.
No, not even diaspora remittances. I'm saying just sitting in domiciliary accounts. Okay?
Should we go and take that money?
No. I'm not saying seize those monies.
I'm just asking.
I'm just
Get
saying
them
that,
into the system.
Mr. President, what can we put together a development plan and even perhaps begin to convince your own citizens why they should invest in Nigeria? Okay? At 25 billion plus or minus 10%, you can build over 20 gigawatt power plants. Okay?
And you say we need
you can
foreign
build
investment.
one more Dangote refinery plus.
Okay.
You know?
And we need foreign
Right.
investment probably when we detain the foreign officials so when they come.
I just want to even say, look, let's even start with galvanizing local investment, okay? There's money already, but people need to feel confident, there needs to be guarantees, etc. Once people are very comfortable, locals are comfortable, foreign money will flow.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Mr. Eigbe. It's been very, very insightful. I'll use that word. Just touch on a number of things in the economy, and just hopefully that development plan, having had this conversation, will come to light.